In this video we're going to apply the GPS method to a passage in the Bible which is from Genesis 22 from verse 2. And we've seen that the GPS method actually contains three major steps: understanding, and the purpose of that is to get to the message to the original receiver; application, we need to ask, is that message applicable to us or is it not applicable to us in the 21st century? And if it's applicable, we communicate that to a specific target group in the 21st century. But first let us read the passage before we get to the GPS method. Genesis 22 from verse 2. Then God said, "Take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you." And then we skip a few verses. Then God realized in the previous verses, that Abram is willing to sacrifice Isaac. And now verse 12. "Do not lay a hand on the boy," he said. "Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld your hand from your son, your only son." Abram looked up, and there in a thicket he saw a ram caught by its horns. He went over and took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abram called that place, "The Lord will provide." And to this day it is said, "On the mountain of the Lord it will be provided." And then verse 16. "I swear by myself, declares the Lord, that because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you and make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky, as the sand on the seashore. Your descendants will take possession of the cities of their enemies. And through your offspring all the nations on earth will be blessed, because you have obeyed me." Then Abram returned to his servants, and they set off together for Beersheba, and Abram stayed in Beersheba. So let us go to the GPS method and see how we will apply that to Genesis 22. And we start with understanding to get to the message to the original receiver. That's the purpose. And we've seen in previous videos we use the acronym of START in the process of a situation, of rather understanding. So the first one, and that is the S, is situation. We would like to know, what is the background of Genesis 22? We see here Abram and Isaac. Abram wants to offer up his son Isaac. And we know in previous chapters in Genesis, especially 12 and 15, God had told Abram that you will have many descendants, you will have a great future, God will bless him. But now he needs to sacrifice his son. So probably didn't make sense to Abram. So the background is here, God asked Abram to sacrifice his son, Isaac. Number 2, type of literature. The reason why we need to know what type of literature it is, because it will determine how we will analyze that passage, because we cannot analyze poetry like prose. So we have seen that after reading this is definitely prose, it's not poetry. And prose can be divided in different kinds of prose, like a narrative, and this is a narrative. And we've seen in the first video about the narratives that narratives can be divided in conversations, parables, symbolism, and stories, and this is a story. The story of Abram, who needs to sacrifice his only son Isaac. And now we know what we have. The background we know it's a story. Now we can analyze the passage. This is where we spend most of our time in this process of analysis. So we have seen, when we read stories, there are three things that we need to look out for. First, episodes. A story is divided in episodes. And an episode is actually a chain of events that are related, having the same location, time, and main characters. So we can see that this is actually an episode. Genesis 22 from verse 2 to 19. It's actually one episode within the storyline of Abram, because it's the same event, same location, and same main characters. So this is one episode. And then the next one that we need to look at when we analyze stories is the plot structure. Plot structure. as well as the main themes, plus main themes. Now the plot structure is actually the way the story develops, and that is to keep the interest of the reader. And the plot structure is actually below the surface of the passage. There is a tension, and then there's relief of tension, and many times there is a result, an outcome of an episode or a story. So when we read Genesis 22, we can do two things at the same time. We can look for the plot structure, and we can also have a look at the main themes while we are reading that. So let us start reading. Then God said, "Take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah, and then sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you." One can immediately sense here is a huge problem. And a problem is one of the elements that causes tension. A problem. So it causes tension. And what is the problem? He needs to sacrifice Isaac. And Isaac was his only son. And he realized, but God had made a promise to me that I will have many descendants. And now I have to sacrifice my only son. So that's a problem. And now it keeps the interest of the reader, this tension. How will it be resolved? So we see Abram is willing to sacrifice his son. And then God said in verse 12, "Do not lay a hand on the boy," he said. "Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son." Abram looked up, and there in the thicket he saw a ram caught by its horns. He went over, and he took the ram and sacrificed it instead of Isaac. And then he realized it was because of the Lord's provision. The Lord will provide. And this is how the name he gave that place. The Lord will provide. So we see in verses 12 to 13. This is actually the solution of the problem. And this is also, when you have the solution, it relieves the tension. And now normally, as we know from episodes, and that there's a result, an outcome. So what is the outcome of this? The Lord provided a ram, and Isaac his life is spared. So when we read from verse 16, it says, "I swear by myself, declares the Lord, that because you have done this and not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you and make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as the sand on the seashore. Your descendants will take possession of the cities of their enemies, and through your offspring all nations on earth will be blessed, because you have obeyed me." And then Abram went to Beersheba. So we can see this is the result or the outcome of this episode. So we have the problem. Abram needs to offer his only son Isaac. The solution is God provides a ram, and then the result is blessing. God is going to bless Abram because he was so obedient. So if we just look at the main themes, we see that Abram, there's a problem. He needs to sacrifice his only son. And then the relief of tension is God provides. And one can maybe add two words: in a surprising way, as well as in an unpredictable way. And then the result is a blessing. So we have then the plot structure, and then we also see the main themes here. So now we go back to the step of analysis. So we see here the episode, the plot structure, and the main theme. And then there's another thing that we need to do. Now we need to conclude and summarize the message to the original receiver. And all we do is just to look at the main themes and just see what's going on there. So one can actually say, the theme that's running here is that God is able to provide in surprising and unpredictable ways. And the other thing that we can add is that God includes human beings. God includes human beings in the way He provides. God includes human beings. Abram was involved. He was willing to be obedient to God. So one can say that the message to the original receiver is that God is willing to provide in unpredictable ways, and that human beings are part of that. Now we need to decide, is this message to the original receiver, is this still applicable to us? And how do we do that? We go to the fourth step here. Does it relate to the rest of the Bible? And if you read the rest of the Bible, I can promise you it relates. I just want to give you a few examples to show you. There's the story of Joseph. Joseph was thrown into a very dark place for him. The end. Maybe he thought, this is the end for me. And we realized that he was sold to the Midianites, and then from the Midianites to Potiphar, and then he became the prime minister, the second in command of Egypt. And that was also instrumental to save the Israelites from famine. So God was using him in a remarkable way, in an unpredictable way. He went from a dark place to a second in command of Egypt. Then there's Naomi. There is Naomi in the book of Ruth. She went from a defenseless widow to a happy grandmother in the end of the book, when she holds her grandchild Obed in her hands. And then there's Esther. Beautiful story of Esther. She went from an orphan in a foreign country to the queen of that country, and she was instrumental in helping her people to go back to the promised land. And then we test our findings by reading other Bible commentaries or study Bibles. Then I promise you we are spot on. The message to the original receiver remains that God provides a way out in unpredictable ways, and He's using human beings in that process. And we see that also the rest of the Bible also prove that fact, that God provides in unpredictable ways a way out for us. Now we need to ask the question, is that message to the original receiver, that message that we got there, is that still applicable to us in the 21st century? So how do we determine that? We ask ourselves, is it ceremonial, cultural, or civil? Because these three things are incidentals, meaning that we don't apply them in the 21st century because we don't observe ceremonial laws. It was fulfilled in Jesus Christ. Our culture is different and our civil laws are different. So we see it's not ceremonial, it's not cultural, it's not civil, but it's rather moral, and everything that's moral is essential. That means it's applicable in all time. Now we can apply that message to the original receiver, to a target group in the 21st century. Maybe it's a friend of you who feels, my life is trapped. I feel I'm at the dead end. Like Abraham maybe felt like a dead end. Now he needs to sacrifice his only son, and God made a promise to him that he will have many descendants. Maybe you ask the question, how will I ever escape this? Resting with God in situations in which there seems to be no way out is probably an opportunity for God to show you exactly what happens here, that the Lord will provide a way out. In verse 14, we just need to be patient, just to hang in there and know that God will provide a way out. Maybe your situation where you feel trapped is just a new beginning for God to do something amazing in your life. I would like to conclude with a quote by Winston Churchill. He said, "The pessimist sees difficulty in every opportunity. The optimist sees the opportunity in every difficulty." May God bless you.